Hey, this is WWE superstar and two-time WWE Grand Slam champion, The Miz, and I'm here to tell you about the best way to champion your NFL team this upcoming season. WWE Legacy Title Belts. That's right, WWE Legacy Title Belts, an officially licensed NFL product. These WWE Legacy Title Belts are premium quality and have been created for all 32 NFL teams. And as someone who's proudly carried title belts on my shoulder, secured them to my waist, and displayed them in my home, I can tell you that nothing will catch people's eyes quite like the WWE Legacy Title Belts. So whether you love the Steelers like Marchand or the Commanders like Ourand, visit Fanatics.com, NFLShop.com, or WWEShop.com today to purchase a WWE Legacy Title Belt for yourself or the biggest NFL fan in your life. Take it from me. They're awesome!
Sports Media Podcast. I'm Andrew Marchand, sports media columnist for the New York Post. He's John Ourand, the media reporter for the Sports Business Journal. Joining us a little bit later for the Big Get, Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olsen. Reminder, if you give us a comment, if you give us the 5 stars, we appreciate it. Let's do it. Who's up? Who's down? John, why don't you take it?
All right, Andrew. My who's up is Julie Lawless. She's the CEO of Cable One, and she also has basically come up with the blueprint for Charter in their dispute with ESPN. There was a couple of years ago, about 4 years ago, Cable One. It's a smaller cable operator. It has less than 1 million subscribers. Texas, Montana, it's sort of in the western part of the country, and they decided to de-emphasize video. So when these video channels came in and they wanted some big increases in their rates, Julie Lawless decided to pass on them and make sure that her customers stuck with broadband, because cable operators make so much more money, so many more profits from broadband than they do from traditional video. So it's different in the sense that Cable One has pretty much given up on video, and it appears that Charter actually does want to find a solution for video. But what Cable One has been able to do in the past 4 years is to show Charter that if it does away with video, there's still a pretty good business for it ahead.
All right, John, my who's up is the NFL. I think we're all excited for it to begin on Thursday night and then into the weekend and into Monday. Hopefully around here we can see the game on Monday, because those of us who have Spectrum, ESPN, ABC are currently off the air for the Jets game and the Bills next Monday. But the NFL is king. We talk about it. Probably, I'd say it's 25% of this podcast, coverage as well. And when you look at it, they're going to have the highest rated shows. The year's going to end with the Super Bowl on CBS and Nickelodeon. And that's going to be the highest rated programming. And so I just think it might be an obvious one in some regards, but the NFL starting up, it's kind of like the start of the new year, it feels like, when football, especially, college last week, and then the NFL now this week, when they begin.
All right, I'm going to go with who's down, and my who's down is Adam Silver of the NBA. And again, it has to do with Charter and ESPN. And I still think the NBA is okay, Andrew. All you need is one more bidder than the number of packages that you have out on offer, and you should be okay. But there is a potential disaster scenario that's facing Adam Silver and the NBA as they wait for their exclusive negotiating window with Turner and ESPN to end. And that is, if Charter gets out of the video business, which is a possibility, and if other cable operators decide to follow, the media rights could reset lower, and that could have broad implications on team values, on player salaries, on everything else. And so you have the NBA going into its renewal for media rights with an ESPN that is now facing potentially an even bigger revenue shortfall than it was expecting because of this Charter deal. You have their other provider, Warner Brothers Discovery, which runs TNT, which also is under some pressure in terms of trying to cut costs. And then you have these digital companies and Apple and Amazon, which aren't interested in this entire package of rights, or just interested in some rights. And that doesn't even mention the Diamond Sports RSNs, the Warner Brothers Discovery Sports RSNs, It's the media business and the rights fees that are coming from the media business. There are a lot of red flags out there.
My who's down is Bob Iger. Bob Iger is one of the iconic media executives of all time. He could be sitting on a beach right now. Everyone would be saying, oh, only if Iger was there. It could be somebody else's problems, the writer's strike, stock going down, and now this disagreement with Spectrum and the trying to figure out direct to consumer. Instead, Bob Iger is in the crosshairs of all this stuff, trying to figure it out. And so far, it's not going well for Bob Iger. Ithaca College alum, second greatest of all time after Gorilla Monsoon, as we all know.
Do you think this is over? You think I've forgotten this?
This has been a poor run for Bob Iger, and he could be sitting pretty, everyone saying, oh, if only Iger was here. And instead, he is here, and things have not gone as planned, at least thus far.
Andrew, that is a perfect who's down to take us into topic one, which for me is pretty much the only topic for of the week. We have more topics coming in, but it's such a big potential story about how people are going to be consuming media and watching games going forward.
No doubt about it. So let's kitchen table this, John. This is kind of, I said at the beginning, this is the Super Bowl of the carriage disputes. You've been covering these forever. There is a feeling that this might be different. Now, let us say that we're taping this. The podcast comes out Wednesday morning. We're taping it on Tuesday afternoon. But as of right now, it's a complete standoff. Yes, the two sides are discussing what to do, but it's affecting 15 million people, around 15 million Spectrum subscribers who do not have any of the Disney channels, which in our neck of the woods means ESPN, ABC, all the ESPN channels. So what should people know just to understand it at first?
People should know that this could take a while, because for as long as there's been a cable business, you have had these types of disputes where programmers want more money and distributors don't want to pay as much money. And for decades, for the past 30 years, 35 years, the programmers have held all of the leverage. And if you look at what ESPN is doing right now, they're using a playbook that was developed back in the 1990s. They had their deal end at the end of August, going into a long holiday weekend where college football started. Next week, you're going to have the NFL on Monday Night Football. And then you're going to just have a wave of college football game after college football game after NFL game. U.S. Open also is going on. And they're depending on angry sports fans calling up the cable system and saying, like, we're leaving you for DirecTV or YouTube TV or whatever have you, and we're gone. And faced with the prospect of losing those subscribers, the cable operators like Charter, like Comcast, always buckled, always came to a deal. This is different. This is totally different, because my who's up, Cable One, that small cable operator has showed that cable has a very healthy business if they just focus on broadband and they focus on wireless, instead of having of paying increasing costs for these programmers. And the reason why I feel that this one is different is because of the way Charter has been acting. So when people call up to complain or to cancel their subscription, they're sending these subscribers to Fubo TV, and they're saying, like, we just want to make sure that you stick with us with broadband, because you need our broadband in order to stream ESPN off Fubo TV. Hopefully we can bundle in wireless as well. But they're already sort of pointing their own subscribers to where they should go if they're angry. They're not trying to keep these subscribers by saying, oh, this will be done in a week and we'll tie up all the loose ends. It's a totally unique way of looking at things. And if this strategy works out, it will show that the leverage, which for the past 30 years have been with the programming networks, has actually turned, and it's now with the cable operators.
Now, I know Moffett Nathanson did report that they're doing that. They are doing that. But I will tell you, like, I have Spectrum. So when you try, this is like disgusting in my opinion. When you try to cancel Spectrum online, they don't let you. They'll let you add stuff. Like, so I've gone through it and like said, oh, let me add something. They'll let you do that. If you want to cancel, you have to call, and that's hours and hours of delay. So They might be interested, as you said, in getting out of the video business. They're not that interested in you or I getting out of the spectrum watching their video business. Like, they're not very helpful in allowing you to do that. So I think that, to me, is like gross. Now, I know that's...
But you have firsthand knowledge. That's been the history of the cable television. There's a reason that it's difficult to cancel. One thing that that Michael Nathanson of Moffett-Nathanson reported as well, that is probably going to change. And I'm curious to see if it does, where you have a QR code that you're going to be able to click on, get rid of video, keep broadband, and add different things, making a one click.
That would be smart. And I think what you're talking about in terms of what's in danger for Spectrum is their brand. And, is their brand going to be hurt by the fact that, the way these things usually go is now people blame Spectrum for not providing ESPN and the Disney channels for them. This is different in the sense of they have agreed to raise cable fees for the Disney suites of channels. That's been agreed to. The direct to consumers, Charter feels like, and Spectrum feels like, those should be provided freely. Now, when I talk to both sides, I go at these people and just try to give the devil's advocate. The thing I don't understand on the Spectrum side of it, again, let me just preface this. For the consumer, this is like a choice. Rooting for either Spectrum or Disney is like choosing between being hit in the face and hit in the stomach. So it's like there's nobody, you're not rooting for, it's hard to root for anybody here. That said, if you look at the history of how these disagreements have gone, when ESPN has added ESPN2, for example, they got more money because there's more programming, more games especially that they were offering. Now with ESPN Plus, where we exist, they've added more games. I don't understand the Spectrum position, just at the history of how things have gone, that they should not have to pay for that extra programming. As a consumer, I would say, yeah, I'm already paying enough. Great. But ESPN and Disney have spent billions of dollars for those. I don't understand how you could say, well, they shouldn't be paid for them based off of past history. Why is that wrong? Give me the Spectrum side of it, or what you think of that.
All right. The Spectrum side of this is that if you go back to 1992 or 1991, when they launched ESPN2, it was exclusive to cable. There was no possibility of having anything go to direct to consumer. If you take a look at ESPN Plus, which is not ESPN, that's not ESPN's direct to consumer, it still has a lot of events that are on ESPN that have migrated over to ESPN Plus. And on top of this, you have in your Who's Down Bob Iger talking about it's not if we're going to go direct to consumer with ESPN, it's when. So all of a sudden, ESPN is launching a competitive direct-to-consumer service to Charter Spectrum, and they're turning around and asking Charter Spectrum for a pretty significant raise in what they pay to have ESPN. These deals typically go like 4 years. I mean, Charter knows in 4 years, ESPN's going to have launched its direct-to-consumer service for ESPN and ESPN2, and Charter's going to be stuck there paying some sort of exorbitant cost with a channel that has to go to the majority of its customers and saying, like, look, we can aggregate your consumer services. I understand why Disney says no to this, but if you're Charter, you're saying we're already spending too much on programming. We're not making money on programming. If it doesn't work, then we'll just become a broadband and wireless company. Like, we don't need to provide that video.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Spectrum for saying, like, you guys are openly talking about creating another business that's going to be an alternative for this, right? For the ESPN and, especially ESPN. That said, and I don't understand why, though, you wouldn't agree to, and maybe they've discussed this, that you could get these channels at a discount through Spectrum. How is that not a win-win for everybody?
So, Andrew, how much do you pay for Spectrum?
$268.
$268 a month. And how big is your expanded basic tier? And they're losing to cord cutting all these people
But John, they've agreed to continue that and charge me my $268. They're cool with that.
They haven't agreed to it. Well, okay, I'm sorry. They obviously did agree to it. However, the leverage has always been with the programmers, and they jammed this through. And finally, they jammed it through to such an extent that they're saying this doesn't make financial sense for us anymore.
But it does. They're saying no because they're agreeing. That from what I've been told, it's been reported elsewhere. They've agreed to what if the fees. If
They've agreed to the fees, but it's under a ton of conditions that are untenable to Disney. So I love when Charter says this. It's like, oh, we agreed to pay the rate, but they were going to knock.
But this is my question to you. Like again, it's between being hit in the face and hit in the stomach. Okay, so I'm not like taking a side here in terms of who you're rooting for here, but like they're offering with ESPN Plus and Disney Plus more programming. They're offering more. Like, should they just put that on ESPN? You know, you could argue that, but there's not enough space on ESPN. ESPN can only put one game on at a time. With direct to consumer, you can put more. So why would it make more sense that yes, it's on basic, right? What we have now is on basic, but then that they have an agreement where a potential direct to consumer or ESPN Plus you can get at a discounted rate, maybe a couple of dollars off. Wouldn't that be a win-win for both?
I think that that's going to come out in the negotiations, and so we'll see where that price comes out. And despite my doom and gloom, I still believe that Charter's not ready to give up on video, and that there's going to be a deal to be had at some point.
Will that be the end game? Because like that's where I don't really understand. Again, if you're adding more programming, I'm getting more games. Is it too expensive? Maybe. Yeah, I agree. It's all too expensive. It stinks. But I think the solution to me for both places, where's the win-win for both these places, is that yes, make it so the best option is for you or I to keep cable and then be able to add ESPN Plus, you know, and then when they go mothership direct to consumer, you figure out where the sweet spot in terms of the payment is there, where it's discounted on cable as compared to what you'd have to pay if you're going direct to consumer. That seems to make more sense. And maybe, again, we always say this when we talk about negotiations. This is with the Pac-12. Yes, they're fighting right now. We don't know. We have to wait till they're in the end zone, right? Or if they never get in the end zone, where that comes out. So maybe this is where the negotiations are. And if you're Charter, you start at zero. Like, we're not paying anything. And then, you know, that's a great stance to take, because then if you get the number you want in terms of this add-on, that to me makes sense. That's how you get to a solution.
You have blinders on right now for this one specific deal. But
Yep.
if you've been listening for the past decade to cable operator executives, they've been telling us that video is it's maybe not a loss leader, but they're not making any money off of video. It's something that they had in as a bundle to get broadband subscribers. And I think it was 2013, Jim Dolan owned Cablevision before he sold it off to Altice. And he said back in 2013, he sees a day when he doesn't offer video at all. I mentioned Cable One a bunch of times. They've done without video. You look at Dish Network, and Charlie Ergen decided regional sports networks cost too much. We're getting rid of regional sports networks. Every single cable operator executive looked at Dish Network after he did that and saw that the revenues went up, profits went up, and it ended up being a good business deal for them. So, this is its individual deal, but there's 10 years, 20 years of particularly sports networks charging as much as they can, and cable's finally is saying, we can't afford this. And it's we saw this coming. The question is whether this is going to be the tipping point or whether it happens in 4 years, but it's clearly happening.
Okay, now people are listening to this, let's assume that no deal has been done. I think this weekend is a key point because you have Texas, Alabama, you have the U.S. Open Finals, you have in New York, very interesting, Aaron Rodgers' debut against the Bills. I mean, those are three must-have programming if you're in certain areas of the country. Those are must-haves.
Let me ask you a question specific to you and specific to Monday Night Football. It's on over the air.
You can't get ABC.
through you can get it through an antenna. I mean, do you have the capability of doing that? Would you even know how to do that?
No, I mean I could look it up, but I mean I'm sure I can figure it out. But like the thing about all this is a pain in the butt. I mean that's why it's so maddening that like you're telling me at one hand that Spectrum wants to make it easy for me to go get ESPN someplace else, and then I got to take 3 hours to cancel it. I mean, my situation is like I'm not like I haven't done anything yet. I'm going to, of course, but I didn't do it this weekend. I wanted to feel like what this was, right? And I tried to, and I also the games that I wanted to watch and stuff I wanted to watch. I mean, there were great games that I wanted to watch on NBC and Fox this weekend, and so I just focused on those. But like over time, of course, I'm going to get ESPN. But I don't think they're really making it easy. You're like the idea that they're making it easy, they're not. Like Chris Canty, does radio and TV for ESPN. He tweeted out he was on the call for 2-3 hours trying to cancel his Spectrum. And so it's like, and now, they're going the full court press in terms of getting the word out there. But the bottom line is here's my question for you. How does this end?
How does this end? Within a month, there will be a deal done. 4 years from now, I don't know. I mean, I think we can clearly see that Charter is willing to go without video, and it's willing to focus on broadband and wireless as its two main services. And you are going to be stuck having to go to Hulu or YouTube TV or Fubo TV or take your pick on that.
But the thing is, we also missed one thing. Maybe you said and I missed it. But the favored nation clause is very important here because if they do this deal with Spectrum, it applies to everybody else as well. So like they can't do a deal that's not tenable for the whole ecosystem. And so that's why this deal is not just like a one-off, like, oh, they want to deal with them. If they do this kind of deal where they kind of gave the direct-to-consumer products to Spectrum for, quote, free, they're not free because obviously there's a lot of fees associated with the ESPN and Disney channels. But that's something that's very important to note because it's not just a Spectrum deal. It's a deal with everybody. And so all these other cable companies are rooting them on to fight this fight so they don't have to and they can reap the benefits.
And they're rooting Charter on because Charter is uniquely positioned to be the big cable operator to fight this. Because if you look at Comcast, it owns NBC, it owns a lot of programming networks. It would have a lot harder time trying to hold this kind of line based on what its assets are. DirecTV, they don't really have a broadband business. They are dependent on cutting deals for these types of channels as well. Charter's uniquely, they have a couple of RSNs in LA. They don't have national networks, and they're uniquely positioned to do this.
I got a question for you. Okay, we have the Brady meter. All right, I feel like that might be my sweet spot. We need the Ourand meter. Wait, let me think. No, does this work? The Ourand odometer.
I like it.
All right, the Ourand odometer.
Ourand odometer.
Ourand odometer. By Monday Night Football, is there a deal done between Charter, Spectrum, and Disney?
I love this prediction because it could be totally wrong by tomorrow, but I say there's no chance there's a deal done before Monday Night Football. I think that both sides want to see what happens after Monday Night Football, and there could be one soon after Monday Night Football, or there could be one a couple of weeks after Monday Night Football, but that's a game and frankly a weekend that you should have circled because that's going to determine a lot.
I was looking for a percentage, but you went full out.
Okay. You know what? Yeah, if I'm all in. 0% chance. 0%.
This operation has a 0% chance of succeeding.
Let me check and see if the odometer is plugged in right now. It's still down at 0. Yeah.
All right. Let's just go right to, because we have Olsen and we have Burkhardt in the on deck circle. We talked a lot of NFL last weekend at the top. Just quick NFL, the thing you're most excited to see this year in terms of storylines. We got Amazon the second year. We got Nance and Romo Super Bowl year. We got a Knicks Super Bowl at the end of the year. Everything else has settled down a little bit. There was some movement in terms of pregame shows and some games, down the roster for some of the, especially for CBS. biggest story that you're most interested in?
The future of TV, man. It's Peacock has exclusive access to a playoff game. I'm dying to see how they market it. The viewership that comes from that, I think that's something that's going to be really interesting. ESPN Plus has exclusive regular season games as well. We've seen the NFL give out exclusive streaming deals to, I think Yahoo had some, and it's happened before. It seems to be happening a lot more this season because we hear from angry soccer fans all the time, and we hear from angry fans that have baseball fans that have to buy another service. What's going to happen with the NFL and these different streaming deals?
All right, for me, the McCourties, who are building maybe a budding media empire, very budding, I'm not going to say, but you got Devin McCourty joining NBC for the highest rated pregame show, NFL pregame show on Football Night in America with Maria Taylor and company. And then Jason McCourty does Good Morning Football, is adding some TV games this year with CBS, adding some radio games. I'm very interested to see how those guys do. I have a big feature on them that I just wrote. I do think coming into the Super Bowl, Nance and Romo, where that goes. And I think the Knicks Super Bowl is very interesting. Noah Eagle, NBC's going to let Noah Eagle call that game, which he's worked with Nate Burleson, who's the star of that show. And so I think that's, I'm very curious about how that all works out too with alternative broadcast, the Super Bowl Sunday. I think that will be a big deal.
All right, let's go to topic 3 before we get to our big get, Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olsen. And it's Chris Fowler, who was calling the U.S. Open. He left the U.S. Open to go call college football. And that's where we heard this.
Instead of punting to pin the Gators back, they have trotted out kicker Cole Becker to apparently try a 55-yard field goal. It was good earlier from 51, had plenty of leg. Drives this one and bangs it through from 55. Did he miss it? Did it go wide?
Yeah, that's all right.
I got excited.
I was excited with you.
I got excited because it was flying long, and he did miss it.
Now, Chris Fowler actually put out a video via Instagram where he explained that missed call. Let's listen to that.
Greetings from Flushing Meadows on the U.S. Open as I continue my crazy but fun 2 weeks, my two favorite sports intersecting. 13 hours after walking out of the booth in Salt Lake City last night, I walk into Arthur Ashe Stadium, excited to have two really compelling women's matches to call. Got Coco Gauff in prime time. Feel pretty good considering about 3 hours sleep. I also want to get the bad taste out of my mouth because I didn't feel good about the way the football broadcast ended last night. Opening game, rust, but no excuses, just bad eye mechanics. Announcers have certain places to put your eyes on every play to call it properly, and just lost focus and had poor mechanics. And I made myself mad. I think you got to face it, you got to fix it. When you do lopsided tennis matches, you take your focus off the court and put it on other topics, it can carry over to football, and that's just not acceptable in football. It's a bad habit. I believe in being transparent here. I'll fix it.
Andrew, your thoughts?
Well, first off, Fowler addressed that, which, like he said, he likes to be transparent. Eye mechanics is something you don't hear that often. He's moving from tennis to football. I mean, I think the big thing is like, if I'm ESPN, like if this is an issue, you could avoid it. Now they just did a new deal with Fowler. So I think he's doing both. But if this is an issue, you could just have him not do football for the first 2 weeks. That would be one, or you could have him just be dedicated to football and not do tennis. I mean, there's other people who could do them. I've said before, I don't think Fowler's even their best play-by-player on college football, so you wouldn't have the eye mechanics issue. Yeah, I mean, he addressed that, and that's kind of like where we are in media, though. Media covering media, it's like, now we always say like players can, they can just forego us, right? The media, sports writers. Now the media covering sports can forego media writers and just say what they think right to the audience.
And we'll talk about it anytime. Let's get to the big get.
John, let's bring in our big gets. Greg Olsen and Kevin Burkhardt, Fox's lead NFL team. They start everything off this Sunday afternoon. They called last year's Super Bowl. Very good reviews, including from us. And we're thrilled to have them again. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
Great to be back. I can't wait. We're here we go, Greg. Week 1.
Let's do it. How's it going, guys? Good to be back on.
Week one, Andrew, I'm so happy to have Burkhardt on here, the host of MLB Studio Show. First question, Adley Rutschman, best ever or just best today?
John, do I have to have security remove you from our set in Baltimore for the ALCS? Is that going to be a problem?
It will be a big problem. Yeah, totally.
I feel like I might have to look into that a little bit. It's a fun year. It's a pretty cool story. I love the way they're playing, obviously. So we'll see. We definitely could be in your backyard in a couple of weeks.
Hey, so thank you for coming on. Year two for both of you calling NFL games. How does the preparation for this season differ from your first season?
And I don't really think I'm sitting here, feel like I'm back deja vu, getting ready, Bears, Packers, sitting here in my office, diving into depth charts and storylines and everyone's guess and how good Justin Fields and Jordan Love. And I don't know if you guys knew that Jordan Love was replacing Aaron Rodgers. That was in the notes this morning. So, I think it feels like it did last year. I think I'm just as excited as I was, and I'm looking forward to diving in. We got a little taste of it 2 weeks ago with our preseason game down in New Orleans, albeit preseason and, not a lot of guys that we, playing and whatnot, but it still felt good. It felt good to be together as a crew, be in the booth. Kevin and I talked during the week about storylines, and it just felt good to kind of get back in the action. And now, we're a few days away from doing it for real. So I'm excited for the season to start. I think the anticipation now at this stage is very similar to how it used to be for me getting ready to play. There's a lot of unknowns. You don't know how the season's going to go. You don't know how things are going to play out. And I think that's the beauty of it. I think that's the part that makes all of us anxious and anticipate the unknown of what is inevitably going to be another another fun NFL season.
So going back though through your first season, the full season, what did you learn from last season that you can apply to this season?
I think I'm constantly learning every single week. I think I learned my season in 21 with Kevin, calling our slate of games. I learned things throughout that entire season, obviously, because I'd never done it. And then last year, had to do it at a different level, had to do it with more cameras, had to do it with, different crew around you, more resources, more technology. I think the entire thing has been kind of an ever-evolving process for me personally, and I think that's been the fun of it. I think it never goes stale. It never seems redundant. It never seems like the same thing day in and day out, and I think that's why I've enjoyed it. There's still a lot of things I'm still learning. There's still a lot of things that we joke about that up in the booth. Kevin, I could see Kevin kind of rolling his eyes and smirking. I mean, there's times where I don't even know what the hell they're talking about. I'm just I need the camera that kind of comes in from behind the end. And they're like, you mean the pit? I'm like, I don't give a shit what it's called. Just give it to me. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm by no means an expert on all things TV. I don't pretend to be, but I really enjoy sitting in a booth with Kevin, talking football, explaining the game the way that we both see it. That part I do know. The rest of the TV stuff, fortunately for me, I can just go with what Kevin steers the ship, and he knows where to take me, and he knows where the game's going to take him. So in that regard, I'm very lucky.
I still get to fix his hair and his tie before we go on the air. So some things are still the same a few years into our on-air relationship.
You got to be true to who you are. You know what I mean?
That's who we are. It's that's the whole thing. We're brothers.
When you look at it a year ago, we had you on and you guys said all the right things, but you were replacing Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. It was a Super Bowl year, and it went well, right? And especially the Super Bowl. But was there a kind of, we got to nail this first year, and were there, I don't know, nerves, but was there, what was the feeling in terms of, I know you said publicly what you said to us, and perhaps that was how you truly felt, but was it, because it is kind of make or break in this business, how it works in terms of how you're judged, especially when you have the number one job. How are you looking at it internally that maybe you weren't kind of saying publicly, or was it the same?
I'm more excited than nervous at this point. I'm 49 years old. I'm not a kid, and I'm just going to go and let it rip and let the chips fall where they may. It's all I've ever done. It's all, and luckily it's gotten me to this point. I will say that, of course, having an all-time Super Bowl and I think we had a really good show that feels great. And I think the biggest thing to your question, Andrew, is, yeah, we know who we're, I looked up to Joe Buck, right? Like, I think Joe and Troy are unbelievable. And Joe was super supportive of us. He and Troy, when they left, like, we obviously still talk. But I think the one thing that I felt, I don't know about Greg, but after the Super Bowl, when we're, getting hugs from everybody and, we're out and celebrating, I felt really proud to kind of live up to what our bosses put us in. They put us in this position. They obviously took a shot, right? They could have done something else there, and they took two guys who were not necessarily household names. Certainly, Greg is way more than I am, and they put us in that spot. So when we got done with the game, and I thought it was a pretty good broadcast, I felt good to kind of make them proud. Hopefully, that's what I felt about it after we were done.
Did they talk to I think they might have talked to other people as well, or people may have contacted them for that job, if I recall.
You may have had something on that. I'm not sure.
Exactly. So, and Greg, for you, I mean, but there is something too. Now, obviously, you guys had worked together before, but when you have the Super Bowl, and to use an analogy, you don't want to have a 3-interception game, right? I mean, like, especially for the position that you've been put in, you wanted to have a strong game. And when you come out of that, I mean, what was that feeling like? I mean, I know broadcasting is not the same as playing, but I would have to think that felt pretty good that Monday, that, you know what, this was successful. I did nail it. Even though you had confidence in yourself, that actually you did it.
Yeah, I think the analogy is right. I think nobody wants to go in and have a 3-interception game any week, right? Whether it's week 1, week 7, a 1:00 game, or the Super Bowl. But I also think, and Kevin and I talked a lot about this, I also, don't think you want to go in and go 5 for 7 for 98 yards. Right. Like, you don't want to go in and just be so scared of throwing 3 picks that you just don't bring any value. Right. The moment becomes so big, and the fear of having a bad day overshines the urgency to go out and really shine and to do the game service. Not for me and Kevin. Right. The game deserved a broadcast fit for the stage that it was on. Right. And whether it was Kevin and I, or next year Romo and Nance, or Joe and Troy, or whoever, like, I think everybody feels that level of burden of saying, listen, this is the premier sporting event in the world, and it's only one day, it's one night, there's no best of 7, there's no comeback tomorrow. You get one shot, and the game deserves a performance that it deserves. So I think Kevin and I were very clear with each other, like, hey man, let's come in and do our game. Let's not be afraid to go out on a limb. Let's not be afraid to go out and say things the way we really feel, and really develop some interesting storylines that maybe other people haven't dove into very deeply throughout the year. Like, just because it's the Super Bowl doesn't mean we have to shy away from what we've done all year, which has been that. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm glad we didn't throw 3 picks, but I'm also proud of the fact that we didn't change what we did. We didn't change who we were because the stage grew. If anything else, we leaned in deeper to who we are, and hopefully what people enjoyed about our show.
Should I tell the funny story if they're asking if we were nervous about the pregame?
That's a great story. Tell it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we're going to both say definitely.
All right. So this,
don't tell us a great story.
This is good. So you're asking if we're nervous, and I totally, obviously echo what Greg said, right? Like, we were just going in, we're gonna do us. Like, we obviously got help. That was an all-time game, right? I mean, it's 35 all with 4 minutes to go. But I think we just, like, that was our pact to each other. But to give you an illustration, you're asking if we're nervous. Pregame, this is hours for the game. We have a hit into the pregame show, and we're downstairs. There's like a green room downstairs in the stadium, and we're just watching the pregame. Like, we're at this point, like, we're ready to watch the pregame. We're having snacks, like eating these peanut butter pretzel things, and like just talking about the game. And we just kind of lost track of time. And next thing you know, our phone's ringing, and I'm like, who's calling? This kind of, and then it's Rich Russo. He's like, are you guys coming to your hit? We're like, what do you mean? Looked at the clock, and the hit was in like 4 minutes. Like, holy shit, dude. We got to get on the field. We're just like sitting there stuffing our faces, like watching the pregame, like, oh, this is great. So like, we're out like trying to find the exit to get out on the field. We go on the field, and Don Corneli's like waving his hands on the other side of the field, and we're running across the field to make our pregame hit. Good news is after that, like, we made the rest of the broadcast. But that was the start of our day, which we laugh about like every time we see each other now.
We literally were putting our earpiece IFBs in, running, and we were like, literally as they plugged our ear pot, whatever the hell it's called, into the pack, we could then pick up the pregame show. I think it was Kurt or whoever was like throwing it to Kevin. I mean, when we literally walked into our mark, the camera was already set on. Kevin's already responding. We're not even in place yet. I mean, we made it by 3 seconds.
They must have been like, "Oh, this is going to be a hell of a Super Bowl call by these two."
The bosses are probably like, "We let these two assholes call our friggin' Super Bowl. They can't even make it on time for their pregame hit. The game's not for another 3 hours."
That's like the broadcast equivalent of like the Thurman Thomas. He couldn't find his helmet, right? Wasn't that what he did back in the day?
Exactly right. Exactly right. Well, fortunately, we made it.
We made it.
So the thing to me about your first year doing it is that you got a lot of praise. I mean, a lot of kudos from critics, from social media. I was lucky enough, Andrew. I spent the NFC Championship game in Philadelphia, sort of behind the scenes. I did a story with you two. I totally saw Greg Olsen as the Pied Piper, sort of going around. And I think one of the main reasons you got so many kudos is that the chemistry that you both have in the booth that goes back sort of a long way. And so I just wanted to open it up to you. Like, what's your go-to story from the road in season one? Like, what was like the one story that you loved to retell?
I don't know if I have one story. I do think I would say the biggest adjustment the rest of the crew had to Kevin and I arriving was, I think when they tried to get reimbursed for when Richie Z tried to get reimbursed for our Saturday night dinners. I think it was a little eye-opening that they're like, you're going to do this every Saturday night. And we're like, yep. This is a big part of our creative process. Like, we're going to go out to a great dinner with the entire crew. Everyone's involved. Everyone's a part of it. And we're going to have a great time. And we're going to do it once a week. And it's going to be great. And I think early on, Z was like, and a couple weeks in, it was the highlight of the week, right? Like, everyone made sure, get all your work done, get your meetings done, whatever you got to do. Saturday night at 7:00, you better be at dinner. And I just think the camaraderie and the ability to form the relationships. Obviously, Kevin and I had a strong relationship from years before, but for the rest of the crew, we knew Aaron. I had never met Tom. I didn't know Russo. I didn't know Z. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any of them. Kevin had some background with some of them. I knew no one outside of Kevin and Aaron to a degree. That was it. So I think you speak about just the crew and our culture and all that. I really believe what we did away from meetings, the time we spent at dinner, the time we spent bullshitting in the hotel lobby bar before or after games, like, I think it led to a crew that everyone felt very engaged. I think everyone felt very appreciated. Everyone felt their role was critical to the end product. And this was not just Kevin and I coming in and saying, all right, it was not even remotely close to that environment. And I think everybody really enjoyed it. And by the end of the year, our Saturday night dinners were being attended by, execs and the bosses. It was a lot of fun. And as silly as it sounds, I do think that stuff matters.
Rich Russo and Richie Zients, producer, director. A lot of our audience knows that, but some don't. So, who do the number one game. Question, how many people were at these dinners, approximately?
What do you think, KB? Like 12 to 15?
I was going to say 15. Yeah.
Right.
Give or take a couple weeks, but most weeks it's around that number. Yeah.
What was the bill running at?
I mean, it depends if there's a seafood tower involved. That really jacked it up.
With the seafood tower, what we got?
I think
probably a couple $1,000, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
That seems sufficient. I think they have money, Fox.
They don't have seafood towers at McDonald's, Andrew.
Well,
that's where you're going.
No. I was trying to get the number.
When the Fox
say a couple $1,000. I mean, not every weekend did we do like the top best restaurant. And some nights, if people were getting in late, like a couple weeks when Kevin's doing baseball, if he's rolling in from a baseball, and sometimes we just like get dinner in the meeting room and just kind of eat as we talk and stuff. It's nothing but, this weekend to Chicago, we're going to get our weekend started off right. We're going to go to a good steakhouse. Chicago has some of the best foods. We're going to make the most of being there. And when we get our opportunities, we're going to make the most of it.
When you do that, that's something that kind of comes from being a player, I think. And something I always wondered about, and does it ever happen to you, the rookies, like when you go for dinners like that as a player, they sometimes make the rookie pay for these dinners. Did you have to do that when you were a player?
So-
and why?
A couple years ago when Kevin and I did the XFL together, I think we didn't exactly have the meal budget in the XFL broadcast that we do now.
That meal budget was zero.
Yeah, I don't think anyone got reimbursed. So a couple of those weeks, if I felt like our producer was maybe a little like, oh man, we went to a really good spot in like DC or whatever for one of the games, I'd be like, all right, I'm the new guy. I'm the reason we came here. I got this one and I'll just eat it. But now, no, now all bets are off.
Yeah, it's the cost of doing business.
For the XFL, me and Kevin would pick up a couple of the bills, but it was all in good fun.
All right, we've made it this far, John.
I'm proud of you, Andrew.
So
19 minutes. I'm impressed. It took 19.
Yeah, exactly. We made it this far. The Brady meter.
What is it?
Right now, it's dead even at 50-50 that he does it. We've been doing the Brady meter since, relatively after he signed his 10-year, $375 million contract. He's taken a gap year this year.
How much?
$375.
I'm getting 7 seafood platters this weekend.
So it's one more than the 6 we normally order.
There you go. Yeah, so they can afford it. All right. Well, like when you look at it, I know you had conversations with Tom when he's playing. How do you approach that? Because you have this year, and then in theory he's coming next year. Which how do you look at it now?
And I'm not just giving you coach speak. I'm not. It's the same answer I gave everybody last year. Nothing's really changed in my mind outside of we don't have the Super Bowl, right? And I think the interest last year was so unique in the fact that the story was the story, then the Brady question, then the Super Bowl, then can Kevin and Greg live up to Joe and Troy? So I think last year there was a lot of layers. I think this year some of the layers have been stripped away. But listen, the reality is the main story still kind of, the shadow of that still kind of looms over it. And there's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing Kevin can do. This has nothing to do with any of us. I'm going to try to go out this year and do the same thing we've done the last 2 years. And that's hopefully give people a broadcast that they enjoy. Not everyone's gonna, but hopefully a lot of people do. And if at this stage next year things change, then they change. And outside of that approach, there's really nothing else. I cannot live and die with every story. I cannot live and die with every speculative rumor. It doesn't do me any good, right? It wouldn't do you any good as a player looking over your shoulder at the new draft pick or the new free agent, and it wouldn't do me any favors now. So I'm going to go call games, prepare for games, try to find cool things to talk about, teach the game, be a part of a fun crew for as long as they'll have me. And next year, when or if things change, we'll reevaluate and see where things stand and go from there. And I don't really have any other way of going about it, and I don't know how else to do it other than just do what we've been doing for the last, call it 18 months, 16 months, whatever.
I'd like to see the analytics on the Brady meter. Can we have a breakdown? Is there some kind of breakdown on that? I mean, I just, because I know you want my answer, I agree with Greg, and I'll say this, and again, maybe this is just me getting older in a different part of my life and just, and just trying to experience what's in front of you. The things that I can't control, I'm just long over worrying about. That's in any aspect of my life, truthfully. It is what it is, right? Like no matter what, I have no idea and I can't control it. So I'm just not going to worry about it. That's kind of been, obviously Greg and I talked about it at the beginning of last year and we really haven't talked about it since. And I don't think we really will this year. We just go out and do our thing. But I would like to see the analytics of the meter at some point.
Kevin is also a stoic. Kevin's very big into stoicism about controlling your own path and whatnot. So he's very, he just tapped into his inner stoicism right there. So that was very good.
I knew I'd make you proud.
That is good. Mike, I guess, how much contact do you have with Tom?
I don't have it. I haven't spoken to him in a long time. We exchanged texts years ago. A couple of years ago, I was at a Panther game when they played the Bucks, and he was super nice and came over and said hi to my boy. And Tom has always been super friendly to me every time I've met him. Every time I've been around him, it's mostly been in football settings. Came out of his way to say hi to one of my kids one time on a sideline, so exchanged a brief hey man, thanks a lot. It meant a lot to my son. good luck, whatever. But outside of that, I haven't had a lot of interaction with them personally. No.
Yeah, same. I mean, there's been like an occasional text, but nothing of substance. And yeah, I mean, that's, until something changes, I think that's the way it is, right?
Well, I want to move on to a different topic. One of the reasons I'm so excited to have both of you on is that you're both sort of steeped in the media business and you like to talk about sports media. And Kevin, we had Chris Fowler talking about going from the U.S. Open to doing college football. And, he by his own admission said he didn't have a very good first week because it was difficult to make that change going from tennis to football. You do that. I know you don't do play-by-play baseball, but you do that like football going to baseball. Is that how difficult do you find that?
I mean, John, I'm not digging ditches. You know what I mean? I mean, let's face it. It's fun. It really is. I mean, when you look at it, like you get to do, game 6 of the World Series one night and do a football game the next, right? And so, yeah, there were a couple of crazy nights I didn't sleep. Like last year, game 6 of the World Series ended in Houston. We had a game in Detroit. I think I landed at like 3:30 in the morning, and it was a 1:00 game. And so whatever, you get a couple hours less sleep, but I think you have to embrace it, right? Like, doesn't mean that it's easy. Doesn't mean that it's harder to focus when you're on, 2.5 hours of sleep, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's just finding the time to do the prep and make sure like that's I think the most challenging thing, right? It's like finding the time to divvy up your time wisely. So you're prepping for baseball and football and getting all of it done and being ready for every show that you're on. Like when you're doing the baseball every night and then jump into a football game, you just have to have, I find myself, I'm relatively routine oriented anyway, but I find myself like really like, I'm like, okay, from, 2 to 3 p.m. today, I'm doing that. Like I really lay it out. Like last year was the first year that I did both. Cause in years past, before when I was on the other crew, I had been off of football for a month. So last year was the first year that I did it. And I just found that like laying it out and like really planning the day helped me a lot. But man, it's fun. It's so much fun to be a part of that and be a part of those big events.
Greg, we talk a lot about college football and what's going on with college football. You played in Miami. I think the other day you were at the opening of the new ACC headquarters. I think you won they pulled the flags up. I think you won that, if I'm not mistaken.
Who's counting? But keep going.
Yeah, that's a title for you. I count my co-ed soccer championship, so you can count up winning bringing the flag up first.
I won the co-ed intramural softball championship in college, so you can add that to my intro next time. But
there you go.
You want me to say that at the Open Sunday? Should I say that?
I just want to make sure my wall is getting full of accolades.
There you go. What do you make of it as, you played big time college football at Miami, from a, obviously from a TV perspective, but I'm kind of more interested as a guy who was on the field and did this and looking at what's gone on. What's your take on all this movement and realignment, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, so I think there's two perspectives that matter, and I think neither one of the perspectives matter to the other side, right? So I think the number one perspective that's controlling all of this is the media rights, right? So I think it's very clear the West Coast teams are trying to find themselves in time zones, find themselves in conferences against both premier brands, but also in premier time slots so that they can get a better deal, right? You guys covered it as much as anybody with the Pac-12, trying to get a TV deal, walked away from an offer, probably looking back, should have taken it. They'd probably still be a conference next year. But that's all this is, right? The TV money drives all of sports. It drives everything right now. And people are smart. They want to be affiliated with both big iconic brands and leagues full of iconic brands that are going to play on major platforms and therefore have bigger TV rights, right? It's not a complicated process to figure out. With the NIL and the transfer and the ability for kids to pop around, we saw what went down with Colorado. 10 years ago, Colorado's not happening. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it's not happening. You're not going to bring in 75 new players and get really good because you bring in Deion. In today's world, you get a guy like Deion who's captivating. He knows how to promote brand. He knows how to attract kids. You can change overnight. And now all of a sudden, a school like Colorado is a lot more appealing to other conferences than maybe they would have been. So I think there's a lot of factors at play of what allows this landscape to change. That's the perspective that's winning and making all the decisions. The perspective that no one's caring about is we all focus this through the lens of football. because football is what pays the bills for all the other sports outside of a handful of schools that have basketball and a couple SEC baseball programs. And that's about it. The kids that are playing, women's soccer, men's soccer, lacrosse, tennis, basketball, they're not flying on private planes. They're not chartering planes and driving onto the jet bridge. Stanford's going to play a game on the East Coast and try to get back for Monday class. Like, I think the student experience for all the not football, they'll be fine. They're going to fly on private planes and get where they have to go. I think the student athlete experience for all these other programs, the non-revenue generating programs, I think the experience for these kids is going to be hard. I think it's going to be hard to carry on a national coast-to-coast soccer schedule, basketball schedule, field hockey, lacrosse, whatever the sport is. I think it's going to be a challenge. The problem is, the reason those sports don't get a lot of seats at the table is because if it wasn't for the finances that were driven by football and a handful of the other sports at some schools, their program would cease to exist, right? So it's this chicken or the egg. Like, you can't survive as an athletic program unless you feed your football program, and you can't survive if your football program doesn't feed your athletic program in return. But to chase those dollars, you're changing the experience for a lot of scholarship athletes. So I think that's going to be a challenge for these kids. I don't know how it's going to all play out, but they're not flying on charter planes in women's soccer to get from Cal to go play Clemson in the ACC. They're just not.
And do you think the solution eventually, though, is football and basketball do their own thing, and then you have more regional conferences for the other sports?
That would be fascinating, and I don't pretend to know the economics maybe as much as you guys do. So I'd be interested to hear. I guess the big concern would be so much, right? So my understanding is that school athletic budgets are both internally generated, right? How much revenue do you just create in itself, right? Just your Texas, Texas and Georgia. How much does their athletic department just generate internally? And then the share of conference revenue, we've seen that with a lot of the realignment. I guess my point is, like, conference revenue, my understanding, is a big part of the factor too. And that's how a lot of these programs. So I guess if the football gets stripped out, what is the conference share of revenue to help support tennis and golf and soccer? And I don't know the answer. I guess that would be my first thing is would the money be separate for football and then the rest of the teams would just share the remaining pie? I just don't know if the remaining pie is enough to sustain if you took football out of it.
Greg, I have one more question on this. As an ACC guy, what do you hope for your alma mater, for Miami? Do you hope that they stick with the ACC? Do you hope that if there's an opening at the SEC, they move there? Like, what's your personal bias right now?
Yeah, I guess my personal bias is I don't really care what conference everybody plays in. I would hate to see Miami not play Florida State. I think since Miami's come into the ACC, the traditional Miami rivalries that I remember growing up as a high school kid, we'd play Florida State, we'd play Florida State. Virginia Tech was in the Big East, so that was a conference game. Syracuse, when they were good, was in the Big East with Dwight Freeney and those guys. They had a good run. But once we came to the ACC, outside of the Florida State rivalry, there was really no other big rivalries in traditional rivalries within the conference. We'd play Florida as an out-of-conference game every handful of years or whatever. So I don't so much care about that. I think in this arms race that is college football, whatever conference Miami could go into that would help them keep up with the Joneses a little bit, right? No one's going to ever catch Georgia and Alabama, and especially some of the top SEC teams, USC, Texas. No, you're not. Miami is never going to be on even playing field with them. They're just not. It's apples and oranges as far as infrastructure, alumni, school size, private versus public. It's just never going to happen. So if they could go into the Big Ten or they could go into wherever, I'd love to see them stay in the ACC, right? It's here in Charlotte. It's local. They play all the teams in the Carolinas. It's good for me personally. But if there was an opportunity to get more revenue from a conference share, from a conference pool that allowed them to increase facilities, increase NIL, to increase, you have to look at it, right? Because at the end of the day, as we've said, that's what's driving this entire ship. College sports right now is an absolute disaster. How about the girl in the U.S. Open who I think went to Was it North Carolina? She was a Carolina tennis player. She made, I don't know, the quarterfinals or whatever she made. She could not accept $81,000 in tournament prize money, but then the kid at whatever school can go do some bullshit deal with it and drive around in a Ferrari.
Yeah, NIL deal.
It's mind-blowing. Like, in what world? This girl at least earned her money. These other deals are all bullshit, and these kids are making millions of dollars off fictitious arrangements, and this girl works her ass off to go to the U.S. Open and can't accept the money. But then these other – I think college sports right now is doomed. I think the whole thing's a mess.
Fair enough.
It's a pod for another day.
Yeah, no, it was a good topic today. Guys, really appreciate you coming on. Last year we did this. We did this now in second season, and we appreciate you guys and wish you a great season.
Got it. Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Always great to have Burkhardt and Olsen on here. As I said in one of the questions, Andrew, I love how they are able to just talk about the entire sports media landscape. They are sports media nerds like you and me.
And the big thing is about the broadcast, and this is like when you talk about crews, they really like each other. You could tell they love hanging out with each other, and that's really important. Like, I think when you look at like when Joe Buck left, I mean, one of the things was Joe Buck did not want a new partner. You know, he and Troy Aikman were really comfortable together, and it's understandable because you have to build up that chemistry, and you have to build up and get to know each other and try to work with somebody, and that can be hard. They were new together. They'd worked, before on XFL, and then they did a year of NFL together. You could just tell those guys like hanging out, and regardless of what happens with Tom Brady, they're going to be lifelong friends. And so you can see that. And, I think Olsen is a guy who's been sought after. I think inside the NFL, they wanted him. It didn't happen. But he could have done some studio work this year as well during the week on Inside the NFL that's being hosted by Ryan Clark. They definitely made a run at Olsen. So they were great.
Well, thank you, everybody, for getting to the end of this podcast. I got to tell you, Andrew, I think I could have gone another half hour on Charter.
I love this topic. Hopefully we made it entertaining for people. If they're listening to this point, I guess you did, especially. You love this topic. It is your Super Bowl. I got to call them out, too, on this. For it stinks. I got to be honest with you. I mean, at the end of the day, for the consumer, for the person who's paying $268, I think it might be $286. I don't even know. It's so expensive. It stinks.
And what the hell is that smell?
Yeah, the chaos and the change, the future is here as in terms of how we're going to be consuming and watching stuff. It's totally fascinating to me.
One last thing: does this push direct to consumer even closer to happening?
I don't know. It depends on what deal is made. My meter on that is at 50-50. I don't have a good handle on that yet.
Fair enough. All right. Master of the board, Chris Mason, always does a great job with everything, including the drops. AC Wyatt puts this all together. People who were listening on Google, we do appreciate you hanging with us. We know there was an issue a couple of times in terms of the pod getting posted. We got our best people working on that day and night to figure that out. To stick with us or try a different, where Apple and Spotify don't seem to have issues, and others. If you can just hang out with us, we appreciate that. So next week, John, see you then.
Take care. Thanks for listening.
This is a non-kicker slander podcast, so I can't allow missed field goals to be.
Wait, did he make the field goal or did he miss it?
3, 2.
As soon as you start, it's like.
Oh, maybe it's this.
Oh, that's totally it. Yeah. Blooper. Finally, Andrew gets the blooper starring role.
Yeah. All right, here we go. It's a lawless world.
To bring to justice the lawless men.
That was an oof. Yeah. Were my up and down too inside baseball?
They're always inside baseball. I'm just kidding. You hear my dog?
That's my dog. That's my dog. That's my dog.